I'm going to start video transmission. Let's do it.
Tell me when you're ready.
Welcome everybody to episode 204 of the You Can't Comp This NBA Trading Card Podcast. We're your hosts, Adam, Amy, and Russell Gibson. And we're almost at the end of the regular season.
Yeah. What's up, mate? Hello, everyone. I hope you're all well. Thank you very much for tuning in. Nearly the end of the regular season.
It is. What's happening?
Not that I think anyone's really watching NBA at the moment. I feel like the Final Four is what everyone's talking about. And
Final Four what?
Oh,
No, we're in April now. I don't know. I actually completely missed March Madness this year.
I know nothing about it, honestly. It's one of those things of like, I feel like I can barely keep up with the NBA anymore. So I don't need something else to sort of slow me down.
I don't know. I've got the AFL, so...
But the Houston game was pretty good when they came back and won. And
Yeah, true. And I don't have
now,
my head in the sand. I've heard about that one, but...
Now that we've segued, so Cooper Flag is reportedly not going to go into the NBA draft. I feel like a whole bunch of teams this year have been tanking really hard for this kid, and now he's going to go back to college. There's a little bit of shade and Freud comedy on that one.
Oh, do you reckon he's full of it? You reckon it's just an emotional reaction? You reckon he's going to do another year in college?
I just assumed that if Utah got the first pick, he would want to go there.
Interesting.
I mean, that was my assumption.
I don't know.
Let's talk hobby.
Yeah.
So we got a bit to talk about today.
We do.
We're going to talk about a sports card nonsense segment that they did. We're going to talk about an eBay report that came out, and it's basically like a summary of all things collectible, which I thought we could just really quickly weigh in on. If you wanted to hear a more targeted or pointed perspective, Grayson from Cherry Collectibles has already done a video on this.
Nice.
And I think for whatever you want to say about Cherry and all the rest of it, look, Grayson knows the business inside and out. And actually, his videos are generally quite raw, and I feel like sometimes he gives away more information than you would expect him to. And I would say the same thing about this video. Like, he was quite insightful on it. So we're going to talk about the Denver Nuggets. We're going to talk about Scotty Barnes. We're going to talk about PSA. Again, they're changing up their pricing and their return times. I was going to say their delay times, but it's a bit of a mix up of words there. But
it's okay. There's
true.
going to be plenty of Freudian slips ahead. I've looked through the run sheets, so.
And look, we might actually run out of things to talk about today, and if we do, we'll just do some comps on Card Ladder. I feel like that's the best way to fill time. And
well, it's the best way, especially with our title. It's probably poetic.
That's right.
We comp this at the end of the show.
Alrighty, so let's talk eBay reports, because I think this is interesting. And just a little bit of back end. eBay actually didn't do the report. So what they did was they gave all of their back end data to Deloitte, which is like this lawyer slash consultancy agency that go and do a whole bunch of work. You might have heard them in the news recently. I think they were up to some pretty dodgy business with doing some negotiations with some banks and the Australian government. But, you know, I'm sure what they did for eBay was all above board and there was no dodgy reporting there. So there's a few like different sources. You can go straight to the source. There's a 36-page report. Hopefully they're going to release a more graphical one, because looking back at previous years, they did these really beautiful, like, 10 or 12-page summaries that just had like graphs and tables and stuff. I couldn't see anything as beautiful as that. But there was some stuff on LinkedIn you can find. There's an article that's actually really well written from a website called MI3. So if you want to Google MI-3 and then the eBay report, you'll find that on the internet really easily. So I thought I would just open the table, put this to you. What did you think about reading through some of this stuff? What were the things that popped out to you?
Well, but to give a brief overview to the listeners, this article is pretty much, this report, I'll read the title: Millions of Aussies Turning Passions to Profit by Investing in Collectibles reveals eBay State of Collectibles Report 2023. So basically, people are turning their hobbies. Obviously, we play a part in a hobby of sorts. But there are a lot of people, a lot of different people that collect a lot of different things. It can go from shoes to handbags to anything that you think someone else may want to purchase off you would be deemed a collectible of sorts. So, a lot of very interesting insights, a lot of very, I don't know, it's data-based reporting as well. So it's not that we suspect people are investing in things they like as literally investments. And putting a lot of money into things that they think will appreciate in value. I just think I think it's a very interesting state of play, I guess, post-COVID. I think a lot of this was identified within, and I don't like to sort of target society in a way, but I think the world of collecting really opened up to the mainstream when the world shut down for COVID. Because we had a lot of time on our hands. We were like, what do we do? And collecting things became really mainstream.
Yeah, and look, I think to take your point, I think a lot of these things were happening anyway. But COVID pushed people with a much greater focus into that. So I would definitely agree with that sort of sentiment there. What was the biggest thing that took you, like a number or a sentence out of this? What was something that surprised you? I think that's probably the big one, I think, to really talk about here.
It was I just only glanced over it, but the LinkedIn one that you sent through, the editor's pick, the total value of Australians' collectibles has soared to an estimated $16.8 billion. And that 1 in 3 adults now actively participate in collecting. So I'm not like the odd guy in the office anymore. I'm kind of a 1 in 3 statistic. So I would
definitely agree with that too. I think that total number says a lot, and I think that we're talking about huge amounts of dollars here. I think probably the caveat to add to that is that it's not just NBA cards that we're talking about. Like it's all collectibles, and I think that's probably good and bad for our podcast. I think it's bad because it's not just talking about basketball cards, but on the good side, it's actually good to sort of sometimes look outside of your hobby and sort of see what else is going on. And so I think the really big one for me is sneakers. I think that sort of that angle of collecting is something I've got no knowledge of at all, but just to see the scale of that and to see the impact on that. And I think the other one that they were talking about too, that it's really caught me by surprise. I think toys is a pretty obvious one. And that's the type of one I think obviously people are buying them, but I feel like the people that are selling toys might not be actually people who are hardcore into, flipping toys. Like that could be something that's sitting in your garage. You've come up on hard times. Then you need to sell some stuff to get a bit of money back. And then, you're very happy to sell something that's now collectible, right? I get that. And people identify with that. So that was one of the statistics that I did want to sort of meld in here. 40% of surveyed collectors have a financial objective when collecting. And so you're like, I need to get back X amount of dollars for this. And that sort of 40% versus 60% of collectors, I actually think that's a really good way to look at them. But I also think too, if we're being, I think that's a very gray number. I think that's fine. A number's a number and it's good to talk about. But at the end of the day, unless you're only selling, you're always going to be collecting a little bit. And of course you need to keep the dollars in mind, because then you need to know what you need to sell it for in the future if you are going to try and make a profit. And also too, to make sure your budget is right. Like you can't just go willy-nilly spending, thousands of dollars you don't have. Like, I think,
correct.
So yes, that number is important, but I also say too, like, I think that is a very gray number for me.
I mean, I could have probably gone. I reckon we could have gone a whole show on this topic. I could very easily go down a number of rabbit holes.
Yeah, sure.
on this topic. I think it's
Well, let me bang this out, and then I'll send it back over to you, and you can go down a rabbit hole. How does that sound?
this is going to be
Yeah.
fun. Yep.
So the thing that we definitely need to talk about this. So the most commonly collected items are coins, 36%, Lego, 33%, toys, 26%, and sneakers, 22%.
Yep.
And I think that for me that's really interesting because
Where
obviously
are the trading cards? Yeah.
basketball cards aren't even mentioned at all.
Well, trading cards in general, like I'll grant
That's
it
where I was leading
as
to
a-
next.
yeah.
And we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago in terms of scale and what's happening in terms of sales.
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon is,
Exploding.
yeah, and far ahead of NBA at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sentence there, that doesn't get mentioned at all. And so I think that's really interesting, I suppose, to keep context of maybe it's just my own perspective here, whilst I think basketball is the most important thing and we get so caught up on like PSA slow return times and actually
Yeah.
like it doesn't even factor into the top 5.
Yeah. No.
And so, I think that's a really interesting one. What did you want to go down a rabbit hole on?
Well, for me, it's one of those things that until you understand the broader point in collecting, you don't know how much of an effect it has on the bigger community. Like handbags. How many of us would have thought handbags would be considered collectibles? But like the eBay report there talks about like different brands of Louis Vuitton handbags and how much they were worth in 2019 versus what they're worth in 2022 and the increase there. We obviously have seen the explosion of Pokemon cards, basketball cards, and when we talked about that numbers of people that were just in it for monetary gain, we experienced this in COVID with the sports cards investors, and we've said recently in the lull of the hobby that they've jumped ship to an extent.
Yeah.
But it was, and I recall a lot of these videos through COVID, and I guess that's where the most Gary V content I watched was around that time of COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, but it's when he kind of exploded. But it was the going to garage sales and finding looking for bargains for things that are collectible to resell. But it's interesting to see how much people have got invested.
I think that's a different type of collecting to what we do on this podcast because
most definitely. But
we're so NBA centric. But I think people that go to say garage sales or they go to op shops, they have sort of a more broader general knowledge of what sells and what this could be worth on the secondary market.
Yep.
And so I think that's a completely different skill set again to what we do, because I feel like what we do on this podcast is talk about what's happening in the current NBA landscape and then try to reflect
umbrella. Yeah.
Yeah, and then try to reflect that back on, how that might influence the hobby.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's, in one sentence, if that's how we summarize our podcast, I think that's what we do.
Yeah.
And
we report on a very niche aspect. Yeah.
For
sure.
Yeah, so I think what you're talking about there is, by the way, I think that's really relevant to the conversation. But what I'm trying to comment here is I think that's just like it's two separate things, and it might be that there are some people in NBA that also do go out and do that. In fact, no doubt they do, because I think there is that sort of flipping, collecting sort of element to it.
Yeah.
But I really think that's like a different sort of like kettle of fish altogether, unless you're going to a garage sale and you find basketball cards. But again, like we just pointed that out with like how like niche this is, it's not that often it's going to be happening, is it? Yeah.
It's, although might it, that's the other part, you know what I mean? Like maybe it is something that is growing and look, yeah, sure. It wasn't named in the top few, but I don't think, I think there's the biggest growth in our space and the numbers of the scale. Like, to bring it back to what we do in our hobby, it's the percentages, right? We see gradual growth of collectibles over time, and you're right. Like in the broader sense, the garage people, garage sale people, the ones that buy handbags and things, they're this slow burn, this slow return. Our market and Pokemon cards are the most recent example. Basketball cards in 2022 were the other example. Was
An
things
exponential.
where you're seeing between 800 and over 1,000% increases in cards.
Yeah, on some things. Yeah.
Rather than something going, oh my God, 200% increase on this coin, that's unheard of. And we're sitting here going, there are things that are a bit like 1,500 to 2,000%.
Well, the example this year is SGA, isn't it? He's the one who's had that like exponential growth in the last 12 months.
Yeah. But I do think, speaking broader still, that eBay report shows that while we might be a niche industry in basketball cards, collecting as a something to do with a purpose in mind is a lot more broad and a lot more spread out and common than you might give it credit.
Hey, it's got a question for you about COVID. You said that people in COVID were sports cards investors, but now that you look back on it, do you actually think that's what people were, or were they just like spending money a little bit willy-nilly because they didn't have like too much better to do? Seemed like a pretty fun thing to do. You might be able to make a bit of money out of it. Do you know what I mean? As opposed to hardcore, like how many actual hardcore investors do you know in the hobby space? Because I feel like I could probably name, say, maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I feel like I know enough people within the hobby to do that, but I would say most people that I sort of know or associate with, yeah, of course, like they're buying and selling cards, but mostly they're collecting. Do you know where I'm going with this?
So that's interesting because my memory of we'll call it the sports card investor space, and I use that very broadly. But
yeah, it is a very broad term.
I couldn't buy product because bots were buying it.
Yeah.
Because the groups of investors were taking
insane,
everything.
It was absolutely insane.
And it was. They were investing and reselling it to make
and
profit.
those days are officially over too. So there's been posts online about this recently, like people going into Walmarts and going to Targets, and the aisles are just filled
with
stock,
product.
just like
unless it's Pokemon product, in which case everyone's punching on for it. But...
that actually they are punching on. Yeah. Hey, in this eBay report, they've actually got a couple of cards in there, so we might as well read through these ones.
Yes.
So this is the average prices and price growth for the selected trading cards. There's actually Pokemon in here, but we'll do it. 1999 base set Charizard, unlimited holo. Average price in 2019 was 300. Average price in 2022. Am I reading through an old report?
No. This is the price increase.
Yep.
This is stuff from the 2023 report. So the 2023 report takes into consideration the jump from 2019 to 2022.
790.
That's massive.
790% increase.
$300 to 2,400.
86 Fleer PSA 7, which I think from our podcast show perspective, that's a good one because that shows price point, accessibility. 2,000 to 10,000, 400% increase. 2016 Evolutions booster box, 200 to 1,300, 725%
that's
increase.
That's crazy. I had a local game store that had those, and they were dime a dozen. Yeah.
2003, 2004 Topps LeBron James rookie card BGS 9.5, 600 to 220, 245%. So I think my next comment on that is probably going to start link us into our next segment, which is the sports card nonsense guys. And essentially that was their pitch, is that unless you're LeBron, Kobe or Jordan, everything else is dog shit at the moment. So I think that's an interesting one too, at the top of, the eBay. Final thoughts on this eBay thing, Adam. We'll go to a break, mate. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's a good idea. We've probably gone for a little longer than normal on it.
What's your takeaway?
I like it. 1 in 3 people is a collector. So people, as quirky as collecting sports cards might be, maybe when it just comes to general collecting, people understand a bit more.
Yeah, look, I think for me, this is really positive because it actually shows like the true total numbers. And this is pure analytics. Like this is not some influencer spruiking these numbers, like saying this, saying that. So it's like, okay, there's $16.8 billion of collectibles in Australia. And so for all these like knuckleheads saying, the hobby is dead and all this type of stuff, well, hang on a minute. $16.8 billion is not dead. And I think I'm going to carry that sentiment onto our next segment where we're going to talk about what Sports Card Nonsense was talking about. It's like, well, I think it's a very simplistic way to look at the hobby if that's just what your like initial reaction or your last reaction is. And so I think this is the type of stuff where it actually like reinforces that we should be happy in this space and we should be enjoying it, you know? So
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I agree with that. All right, let's take a quick break.
Yep. Game Time International, thank you very much for your ongoing support. Go to GameTimeInternational.com. You will find the world's best magnetics there. Now, at the moment, Game Time International has been putting up a whole bunch of content. They've been hitting hobby shows. They've been cracking slabs left, right, and center, which is probably something I need to talk to you a little bit about, Ad. How do you feel about Game Time International cracking slabs and then putting them into one touches?
How do I feel about it?
Yeah.
Are they my slabs? Are they other people's slabs?
They're other people's slabs.
Oh,
obviously,
I don't have a
obviously they're doing it with consent.
I was going to say, is this with or without consent? Because that concerns me a little bit. But no. Look, if people want them cracked out of the slab safely and put into these very, very appealing one touches, yeah, that's cool.
My OCD is what happens to the tags afterwards. Do they get returned back to BGS or PC?
Ooh.
I might even follow that up with him, to be honest.
Burnt.
How do we get onto this? Let's get back to the ad. Anyway, so the ad is, so at the moment, they've got an excellent video up. So they've got a John Stockton card in a different type of one touch. It doesn't matter like what brand it is. And they're showing how the card is moving up and down inside the one touch. And I think that is a massive negative about one touches. And then they go on to show how it goes into their sleeve. It sits into the magnetic perfectly, and then it demonstrates how there's no shake at all in the cards. Look, again, I think this is another really good example of just the quality of their products, understanding what collectors need, how to actually protect cards. And again, the finish on them is just absolutely amazing. So they've got the piece of plastic that goes over the one touch. When you pull it out, you remove that protective layer so that your one touch is absolutely flawless. Guys, check them out. If you haven't seen GTI one touches, do yourself a favor, get out there, pick some up, put them into your collection. They're just absolutely amazing stuff. So thank you very much to Team GTI. Adam, we're back. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Alrighty, Sports Cards Nonsense. Shout out to the guys. Shout out to Jesse. Shout out to Mike, Gio. We love you. So whatever we're about to say.
Your cousin Jesse Gibson.
We are absolutely related. We just have never met, and we live in separate countries. But that's okay, you know. Yeah. Alrighty. So they had a guest on recently on their podcast. So I actually found this on YouTube Shorts. Okay. And I'm sure they said this to trigger people. And they've got a reasonable amount of responses on their Instagram page about this 100%. And there's some really good responses, by the way, too. Not just like hate responses coming back. But essentially what their guest said was, if your name is not Michael Jordan, Steph Curry, or Kobe Bryant, everything else in the market is just absolutely awful. So I think that we should take this very short soundbite and we should actually break it down and answer it appropriately. So just say you were part of this conversation. What would you add to this conversation? How would you respond to that?
I would say we've been here before in the hobby.
Yep.
And I mean, we touched on obviously sports card investors earlier.
Yeah.
But it's, if you're looking for something that's liquid, that's like quickly movable, you're right. Like, I get it. But if you want to flip after 3 days and 5x your money, those days are gone. And yeah, you get the FOMO element of release day pulls. And
COVID
that's where
was an
there's
aberration
spikes,
that
right?
couldn't continue.
Sure,
So
but
let's,
before COVID,
yeah,
there was value in the hobby, but it just wasn't 10x. And I think people need to change the lens with which they look at the trading card world.
yeah,
Yeah, you're not going to be able to spend $50 and make 5,000.
yeah,
You're going to get, for $50, you're probably going to get a $20 card and some other stuff, and then maybe that $20 card becomes a $60 card. But if you're there for the magical lottery ticket flip, then you're here for the wrong reasons. That's my thought on it.
yep. No, I think you've covered it in a different way to what I would have gone about it. So I actually think that was a good answer. And I think you also covered it in a different way. So when you said that $50, are you saying that you were going to buy a pack?
A pack,
Or a blaster box?
A blaster, yeah.
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 I'm going to buy a blaster. I'm not expecting to hit a $2,500 Wemby rookie or something. Well, there's no Wemby in this draft class, right? So they're alluding to, like, this reel or this short is talking about you buy your $50 blaster and you're going to get a $40 Stefan Castle.
Yeah.
Because the draft class is trash. Sure, in their rookie year, they haven't been amazing. There's a guy named Cade Cunningham that was 21, 22. And we're now in 2025 and everyone's like, oh, let's get on Cade.
All right. So actually, I think they were speaking about three different things. So I think I'll address the first one, which was the
Jordan.
If you're not Kobe, Michael Jordan,
Ooh.
you're nothing. So I think the first thing to answer back to that is, if that is what you think, I think that you're not looking at the market hard enough. And so we've been speaking about, so the two that come straight to my head straight away is Jokic. Like, we've been talking about him being a slow burn, getting onto the train now because this is going to be good in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And essentially that couple of years became 12 months. And so now I almost feel like I did not get onto the train. I've missed that train. So that's someone who's gone up that's not named Michael Jordan. The other one that's gone up a lot this year, to the point that I'm actually worried about it, is our boy SGA. So that's two people. Okay.
I'm concerned that's a potential bubble that will burst, but
yeah. So the other one we could talk about too is LeBron James, because he is also not mentioned in his top three. And I probably think that was a mistake on him, because it's what he was doing was a very, very short take. So let's just say he intended to mention LeBron, but he didn't. So I have to then mention LeBron James, because I think at the moment LeBron is not cheap, but at the same time, I think if you're going to be putting someone away for the long term, I think that will be totally fine.
Yes.
I think the LeBron market is going to change over the next 12 to 24 months, because he'll be signing with Fanatics, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot more LeBron autographs. So you do have to keep that in mind as you're purchasing LeBron autographs today. But that's a separate issue for today.
Separate, yep.
Luka Doncic, I think, is a very strong buy at the moment, because for as stupid as Nico Harrison is for trading him away for an injured NBA player and no future draft equity, Luka Doncic is probably, if he's not going to be a top 2 or 3 player for the next 10 years, it's going to be very much surprising me, because he's just that skilled. He's in Los Angeles. He's going to have the media around him. He's going to have a good team around him. Like Los Angeles always does it. So we got that.
Yeah, they rebuild very quickly. Yep, you're right.
Then we had Wilt Chamberlain with a $1 million sale of his rookie card this year, which was then immediately resold at private sale and graded with PSA. So you could make a very strong argument that in a month or so, on one Wilt Chamberlain card, about $2 million rolled through it. Yeah?
Yep, I would agree.
Wemby is probably holding up the hobby at the moment, despite having a clot in his arm.
Yep.
And we've highlighted this the last couple of weeks. We were expecting a large dip on this guy. Let's buy the dip. We haven't seen a dip as of yet. He was down about, 4% the last time we looked. Moving outside of that, we've also got Caitlin Clark, who has sold for the highest woman's trading card in history. So she outsold
Do we
Serena Williams.
do we include WNBA in the NBA trading card space though?
I think you can, because if he's saying if you're not Jordan and Kobe and Steph, well, actually there is a new player in the game, and that's Caitlin Clark. Yeah.
Yeah, fair, okay.
Stepping outside of that, now this is the next tier down, or the next 2 tiers down, but this is just, to my own heart.
Yep.
I think Hakeem Olajuwon is a very good long-term purchase at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people disagree with me on that, and I think that's totally fine. And then one step further down is Paulo Banchero. I think in terms of his size, his skill, what he's already shown, how good he's made that Orlando Magic team in a very short period of time.
Yep.
In addition to his current pricing. Look, I don't think his current pricing is dirt cheap, but I also think too, if you're looking to make a medium purchase with a higher upside, I think, like, what I'm trying to say is, if you're not looking to bargain basement to try and prospect on something, you want something that's a bit more solidified.
Yeah.
I think Banchero is a really good place to start. So,
yeah,
just off the top of my head, we've just named 8 people.
You named a fair few there.
Yeah. So I think
you've taken a couple off the list that I would have given, but
yeah. So who would you add to that list outside of what I've just said?
So Luka and Jokic, I think, were pretty obvious.
Yeah.
SGA, I would take off the list because I think it's going to be an up-down for me.
Sure.
And that's my prediction. So that's
sure.
But at the moment, he's going through the roof. So
I still think that's a counter argument to what he said, though, right? Because
exactly
you can't just say, "Oh, all these people are nothing compared to that."
We've seen. I think I touched on Cade because I think Cade is evidence that resurgence, that year 3, year 4, there's a leap. Yeah. So don't rubbish out on the draft class.
Yeah, and he's done very well these last 12 months. Yeah.
Right? So I think Cade's back on the rise.
He's done really well, yeah, and that was actually exceeded my expectations. So,
one that I'm, and this is where we talk about, I mean, I'll go back in time and I'll say, I think Shaq's got a lot of presence still.
We're going to talk about Shaq later in the show. Yep. So you can shoot your shot now or hold it till later.
I'll hold it till later, but I think he's definitely not one that is zeroed out in the hobby and is beloved amongst, has had his impact on the league and still does to this day. Yeah. Right? He's in the media, he transitioned to the media, so he's still a very big presence in the hobby, so to speak. But to come back to the current generation, the torch is always passed. There is always a new face to the league. And one name that I think cannot be discounted, well, 2 names. I'll say Anthony Edwards and I'll say Jason Tatum. These are players that may not be the instant impact that you think they are, but we saw the spike from Ant last year.
Yeah,
that kid has the personality to be the next, and this is why he spiked. He was the next Kobe/Jordan, right?
Man, okay. Look, without going into his current paternity situation, and child support payments, I think that he
suffers with too much confidence.
He has a lot of confidence and a hell of a lot of personality. I will grant you that. My concern with him, though, is look at his market cap and look at the people who are below Anthony Edwards. They have done a lot. And so my concern with Anthony Edwards at the moment, so if you're buying into Edwards now, I'm like, honestly, I feel like you've got a 50-50 chance. You've got a 50% chance it'll go up, but you might even have a 60% chance that it's going to come down. That's where I'm at with him.
I'll segue quickly to my criticism of market cap.
Yeah.
Because the SGA market cap, no one spent that money on SGA.
Well, some have.
A couple of people did and took all of the other cards with it.
Correct. Yeah,
so
but
the real.
But I think market cap is good. I agree with you, but you also can't discount it. Like, look through market cap, and sometimes you're like, that guy shouldn't be up there.
Sure, but then
that guy's too low,
count, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a pop count that's high. So as soon as if the card doubles
number
in price,
of cards matters. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
But I think Anthony Edwards.
And Tatum's a good one for the opposite reasons. I think he's undervalued. I really do. I think if we're looking at total career, Like that guy
And he's been
has
around.
been good.
He's almost been. He's
And no one is talking about the Celtics this year, which to me is a really good thing for that. All right.
There's a lot of Lakers Celtics talk being doused about.
The other thing they touched on really quickly then was what they were really alluding to was flipping boxes and breaks.
Of course, that's once.
And so I think the optics of that to me is really poor, because I think break is crying poor, and we've seen it, on people have made reels about it on whatnot and all this type of stuff. And look, it is frustrating. Like if you are not getting an outcome that you want, I get that 100%. But I would also say too, going on a massive media podcast and complaining about the flip is no good at the moment. Like that's to me no good. Then they really quickly talked about autographs too, and I think that's a completely separate argument altogether. But so I think there's world finances that are happening at the moment that's impacting the hobby and the ability to sell breaks and flip boxes, and that's what he's talking about there. I would also say too, it's very fragmented at the moment within the hobby space, because
we're in a position of,
for example, the easy one for us is Wemby. Wemby didn't sign with Panini, and that has absolutely impacted a collector's ability to get licensed NBA autographs at Wemby, right? If you take the trickle down of all the other guys, so say the top 15 people from this year's draft, apart from Reed Shepherd and the Bazulis kid, who else signed?
Can I ask a counterpoint to this? I don't know if it's a new take.
Yeah, hit me.
A lot of cards, and we're talking bigger cards, and we're talking history. Years down the track, something happens and a card spikes. Do you think the history books are going to give a fat rat's who owned the license to Wemby's autograph back in 2025 when we're in 2037 and Fanatics has been the overlords for the better part of a decade?
So I think what you're saying is, so a couple of weeks ago we spoke about, it was either was it a Logoman?
Yeah, there was the Logoman
NT that sold for 5 times more than the other one. I think that's what you're trying to get to, isn't it? Yep. So what you're trying to say is that the unlicensed, not game worn patch is overpriced, but the RPA is underpriced, and it's 5 times cheaper than the non-autographed piece of non-game worn memorabilia. Is that what you're saying?
I'm alluding to that, and I'm also
okay. So let's take that as an example.
You've got the Star Jordan rookie now. That's a slightly different take on it. But but sure, that was denounced years ago, and now everyone's like, "No, that's the rookie."
It's actually more valuable, than the flip. Look, I think that people are always going to want licensed product over unlicensed. So I think there's always going to be a disparity between those rookie cards, like no doubt. But to take your point, which is I think what you're trying to say is actually, is it a good buy to buy Wemby autographs at the moment? Look, probably.
Yeah.
But I'd also say too, I think you need to further temper your return on investment expectations. And that we've been talking about that tonight with eBay and all the rest of it.
Funny because remember when we had drinks and ate chicken after the hobby hangout, and my thing about repacks was, at what point of buying a repack are you upset? Like the ROI, like. When I buy a repack, and if I spend $100, at what point do I feel like I've been ripped off? They're actually applying this to the general product. They're like, we're opening product and we're not seeing any value with what we're opening, because unless your name is Kobe, Jordan, or Curry, there's no value. And that's they're being a little bit dramatic for effect. Yeah. But that's what they're saying. Like
there's no Kobe in this. There's no Jordan. There's no LeBron. Well, there's LeBron, but no autographs.
It's I spend $50 on a product, and I'm not normally upset that I only got $20 of value, because there was a chance I got $1,000 of value if I popped a Kobe auto.
Look, I think that Panini definitely were presented with a very difficult problem of not having autographs signed in their products. And to their credit, if you want to say that, or you have to give them some acknowledgement, is they pivoted pretty quickly.
Agreed.
So, for example, and this is a terrible example, but this is what they did: the Donruss no autograph.
The Nordo.
And that was relatively collectible.
I love it. I still want a Wemby Nordo.
Right. And so then let's move forward 12 months. So, for example, and this is the card we spoke about last week, the manga card. So that doesn't have an autograph on it, but that is...
Prismania.
What is that?
Oh, no, the manga one. Yeah.
No, the manga one, right?
Yeah.
So what are they selling for now? Okay, let's just say somewhere between $3,000 and $7,000 USD, right? Yeah. And so, like we don't have rookie autographs anymore. That is absolutely true, and it's not fantastic. But they've also then gone about, Kabooms are already there and all that type of stuff. Like, that's all true. But I think they're now more focused on chase cards and numbering cards, in different parallels. So they've done other things, to keep things in. So to answer your question about not getting value, look, I agree. It's sometimes when you go into breaks, you don't get a lot back, Mm-hmm. You can also get some stuff back. I don't want to go into that and defend that, but what I'm trying to say is, like, they've done different things to keep people interested in the product. Yeah.
I'm just going through some recent eBay sales of Wemby.
We need to go for a break.
We do. We probably need to take a breather.
Yep. Alrighty. Thank you very much to the boys at Fast Break Trading Cards. Just to summarize some of their recent achievements, they had their 12-month celebration at their shop. They had a trade day, which was amazing. It was a fantastic day. And they're also now the named and sponsoring partner of Collect Fest. So guys at Fast Break Trading Cards, congratulations on your ongoing success. Now, if you would like to go to a real hobby shop that has fantastic customer service, go down to 75 Chillip Street in Cheltenham, Friday 12 till 6, Saturday 9 till 5, Sunday 10 till 4. You can take your cards in to sell them, to trade them. You can buy cards out of the shop. You can also send your cards off for grading. You can buy sealed product. You can buy supplies to protect your cards. I'm not too sure if they've got GTI, but they'll need to get on that and get some. You can also do your pre-orders there and also gift cards. They really focus on the collector's experience. They are collectors themselves. I know that for a fact. And they are providing you with a fantastic collector experience. Also, check them out online at fastbreaktradingcards.com. Adam, we're back. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great. I was just looking up some deals on Fast Break.
What did you find?
Oh, just a couple of bits and pieces. When you said supplies, I realised I needed some more sleeves. So, just Googling.
You should. I'm sure the guys will hook you up, honestly.
I'm sure they will. I might pop in. See if they're open over Easter.
This next one is...
Before the break, we were touching on the next day order. Oh, God, I just lost it. I had the recent sales of the Wemby next day auto that has no auto.
Yep.
I think it was last sold, or they've got some up on Victor Wembanyama. By the way, there's a lot of autos selling that are unlicensed, and they're all fetching decent amounts of money. But yeah. I don't know, the next day autos being there's buy it nows for like $1,000 Australian, but I'd like to see some sold listings. Yeah, 680 AUD is the most recent sale of a next day auto. So they're not cheap. That's the Wemby I want. So
it's actually crazy, isn't it, when you say it like that?
Anyway, the Nautograph.
Alrighty. Now, this next story is not a joke, and I thought it was a joke. I actually thought this was a joke similar to when I heard Luka was getting traded. So
I like that joke. That was a good one.
The Nuggets have fired general manager Kelvin Booth, and they've also fired their coach Michael Malone. Now, my understanding of the situation is that Kelvin Booth had been investing into young players in the draft and wanted his coach to start playing them more with the idea that they would have a young, cheap bench to put around their very expensive veterans and stars, which I think in the ideal world, that makes a lot of sense. And if you're building a team, I'm with Calvin Booth on this one. True. Now, the Michael Malone experience was that he wanted to play veterans and he wanted to play maybe 1 or 2 young players, but not 5 young players coming off his bench. So
Fair.
I think the crescendo was playing Russell Westbrook in too many minutes. And then there was a incident where he turned the ball over, missed a shot, and the Nuggets lost. And look, Westbrook's is a very
done that a lot of times in
he
his
is
career,
a very known quantity. You know that he wants to take that mid-range shot. You know that he's going to turn the ball over. It's like Westbrook is what he is. I think it's like Popeye, honestly. Like, we're not getting surprises here.
Agreed.
So, look, allegedly they weren't communicating. They weren't, both on the same page, and ownership basically just let both of them go. The thing that really surprises me on this is that I genuinely thought that the Nuggets were a dark horse or a step above a dark horse to win the championship. I think when you have the best player on the planet on your team, you should probably do things like not firing the coach, a week before the playoffs. I don't see how that is going to help their cause.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So I wonder if there's something else going on in the background that contributed to this outcome. So, for example, what I'm getting to here is that Michael Malone did a power play and said, either fire that guy or, I'm not coming back. And the owner was just like, I don't want to deal with both of you idiots anymore. Like, just,
You're out. You're done.
You're both just fired. So, the replacement is David Adelman, who is the son of Rick Adelman. If you remember him from the 80s and 90s, he was an offensive genius who was, in my mind, in the same conversations like Don Nelson.
Yeah.
So in terms of pedigree, I like this a lot. I'm just really concerned with that, very much late season change. So this helps your team, for example. This helps the Celtics. This helps the Thunder. And the Thunder have been the model of consistency this year. Like, they have a genuine identity. They know all of their roles. Whereas now you're like, is a new coach going to come in and establish a new set of roles and a new rotation? Like, to me, I'm not all about this. So look, I'm very sad for all Nuggets fans out there. I think this is a terrible outcome for you.
Can I allude to, there was another slide when we were talking about card values and players that aren't named Kobe Jordan and things like that. On the run sheet, there's a link to a card price change.
Yeah.
And there might be a bit of a Freudian fact in there, because it's got Nikola Jokic at 16.3% increase, but it had a photo of Luka Doncic. Is there a chance that they're alluding that maybe they may be on one and the same team in a near point in the future?
I don't know. I'm not too sure if I made that mistake or someone else online did it.
I'm hoping. Did I send you the Instagram reel where it said how the Lakers can organize the next best three, and it had Nico Harrison going to Denver? That's the next GM. All of a sudden, Jokic to the Lakers.
We barely talked to any card prices today, Ad. We got to do this. Nikola Jokic last sold for $3,355 for silver PSA 10. Population on this 184. This is the last 3 months, up 4.8%. So yeah, he's still trickling along really nicely at the moment. The last 6 months he's up 22%. The last year he's up just 9% actually. So should we go for a break and then we'll come back and we'll do the last 10 minutes or so?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
That was quick.
It was quick. We are way off track tonight, but it's all good.
The next one will be a good run. The next one will be it'll be quick hitters.
Thehobbyhangout.com.au. Go there to get your tickets to the show. Sunday, the 1st of June, 2025, in the greatest capital city in the world, Melbourne, 9 Nicholson Street, Carlton, 10:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. I think we can say this live. We're going to be there.
We are.
We're going to be involved in some capacity, whether we're doing podcasting up on the stage. We don't know all the final details, but watch this space. We will be there.
It's extra large this time. It's bigger. The venue is bigger and better.
Goldens is going to be there. Australian and international guests. Exclusive speakers sharing insider knowledge and tips. They must have other people coming other than us, Adam. Sports cards, basketball, NFL, MLB, soccer, and more. Massive selection of Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! And more. Trading zones, trading card game tournaments, amazing giveaways, interactive brand activations.
Plenty of brand activations. Plenty, all of them.
That's right.
I'm
Casual
looking
play
forward
areas.
to the trading card tournaments. Might be interesting though.
Now, this is actually called the Hobby Hangout XL this year. It has been moved to the Melbourne Exhibition Building to make sure that everybody can fit in this year. This is going to be very exciting, people. I cannot wait to see this. I think that this is the hobby day that people need and people wanted. So I'm really, really looking forward to this.
I'm excited. That's all I've got is I'm excited.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to you, Adam. How are you doing?
I am fabulous. I'm ready to hit the ground running. I know.
Yeah.
I knew we were going to go overtime today with our big topics.
Yeah, we did. That's okay.
It was bound to happen. It was bound to happen. But there is still plenty of news to go through. So
I think we talk
let's
about Luka
strap in.
Doncic. Yeah. So we talk about his return to Dallas. I thought that the Mavericks organization were very nice to him. I think the video tribute that they did to him
was lovely.
Was amazing. And also him sitting there with tears in his eyes is absolutely cemented to me that he did not request a trade. He was essentially forced out of Dallas. So
yeah,
I'm I still don't understand this trade. I'm still in the shock phase of grieving here. I don't understand what's going on in this space at all. He went out and absolutely torched them. And for a guy who's out of shape and all the rest of it, he really I wasn't picking up him being deconditioned.
No.
It's almost like Nico Harrison isn't a basketball guy and he doesn't understand what is important in basketball.
It was, yeah, he does it. You've hit the nail on the head. The thing with Nico Harrison is we get the mistakes being made, but the Dallas fans, all credit to them. They are heartbroken, and they just wanted to. They came out to that game to show their love and respect for Luka. The shirts they wore were like "Thank you, Luka" in Slovenian. Or something like that. They all brought out their Luka jerseys, be them in purple and gold, like my one, or the classic Dallas.
Yeah,
but it was. They chanted every time he shot. They cheered everyone in Dallas, and it just got weird at one point there. But I tell you what, if you want to see Luka Doncic drop 45 on your team, just make him cry before the game. Done.
Yeah. Anyway, Luka Doncic. Rookie silver PSA 10. The last 3 months is up 35%.
It doesn't surprise
He is
me.
absolutely spiked hard. Actually, the peak was up to 1,800. Last sold for 1,400. So collectors are obviously very bullish about his move to the Los Angeles Lakers, and I am too. We need to talk about this sale because I don't want to talk about this for a long time, but we can't do the show without it. SGA, this is from our friends at Card Ladder. Green Pulsar, number to 25, PSA 10, sold for 8,700. I think that is a very, very, very strong sign of what we're starting to see here from SGA. You were talking about how that not every card is selling like that. Like you're spot on, mate. Like what you're saying is 100% true, but also too, when you see sales like that, like that's a legit sale.
Yeah.
So,
but a lot of them sold for that $1,000 to $3,000 mark, and now all 7 in that pop count are accounted for at 8,700.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's exactly what happens with the market cap numbers. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like that's not a small number.
Yeah. It's not like whoops, I made a mistake when bidding on a card.
He's moved on to the next step up the pyramid in terms of, being collectible and
is everyone pulling the trigger on him already winning the MVP? Because I know some betting agencies have got him as a overwhelming favorite.
100%. That is absolutely baked in. It's baked in. Yeah.
I still think there's an outside chance that that all the media people go, oh my God, Jokic actually probably deserves this.
Yeah. So we are not a betting show. So we are going to talk about odds, but in the context of what's happening in the in the real world. SGA is at 275. Tatum is at 330. Donovan Mitchell. No, sorry, that's Finals MVP.
I was going to say
MVP?
Finals MVP. It's him and I know.
Oh, do you know what? The market will be down because the
It'll be
season's
closed.
finished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, the season finishes tomorrow. But the NBA, you're right. It's crazy though.
Please disregard what I just said. That actually demonstrates how much I don't know about gambling. Alrighty, now this next one is about buy, hold, and sell. So this is from our friends at Slabstock. Actually, they're not really our friends, are they? They're more of our someone we follow on Instagram. Where is the 2021 NBA draft class at now? We looked at the most recent Prism Silver PSA 10 rookie cards and compared them to 2 years ago at the top 4 picks. What stands out to you? I'm not going to go through the other ones. I just want to talk about Scotty Barnes here. In 2023, this sold for $185. His silver PSA 10. It last sold for $74. All right. So let's deep dive into this relatively and break this down as to what and why the price has gone down so much. So the first price of 185 was probably a little bit too high, just based on it was like new stock.
Sure.
Scotty Barnes was a very exciting rookie. Fast forward, they've broken up the core of that team. They've traded away Kyle Lowry. They've traded away a whole bunch of their veterans, and essentially they've just cored that team out. They absolutely overpaid on Emmanuel Quickly.
True.
They picked up RJ Barrett, and actually he's been very steady for them. He's been very good.
Yeah.
And I think the objective of the Raptors this year is to lose games, not win games. Scotty Barnes has been injured this season, not overly injured, but that's definitely like played into it.
Yeah.
They then acquired Brandon Ingram, which is to me a little bit confusing about like, what's the direction of this team? Are they rebuilding? Are they not? But Ingram's never played a game for them. So you could also say
they got an injured Ingram. Yeah.
It's a strategic pickup this year. Keep him on the bench, rest him out, get a good draft pick, and then he comes back next year and he's 100%.
It's not going to be Cooper Flagg.
Yeah.
He stayed at college.
Well, that's right. Which is painful, isn't it? It's so painful, all these teams that... But actually, I've got no sympathy for these guys. If you want to deliberately lose games,
to get a high draft pick, you still get... But it could still be a good draft class.
I literally say eat a dick to these guys because, they're... just compete. This whole thing about not competing actually drives me crazy. I've got 6-year-olds that I coach that compete harder than some of these teams.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
There's a flaw. See, I can see where the value is different. I mean, there's a hint on the card. It says Toronto there, so
I think that does influence it a little bit. But so where I'm going with this, at $74, that is a very strong buy for me because, okay, I should add this in at some point too. So I've actually seen Scotty Barnes in person play, and I would describe that it's a similar experience to like seeing LeBron James play. Like him out on the basketball court.
Whoa.
He is a physical presence.
Okay.
And he can do everything. He can rebound. He can dribble. The offense can flow through him, and he can do everything in between. He can hit shots and facilitate. So I really love Scotty Barnes, and I think that he can influence a game potentially, say, 85% or 90% of what Kawhi Leonard can do. And I'm saying that that's a huge compliment for me because I love Kawhi Leonard when he's fit and well and out there playing basketball.
Can I give you a buy, hold, sell, or what would this card be worth? Hypothetical universe that this year, the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Toronto Raptors are swapped. The Toronto Raptors are up the top, looking the best in the East.
Yeah.
All of these players out of nowhere are playing out of their skin. I guess it's the Donovan Mitchell. Or
I think you just flip these numbers around, honestly.
Yeah. Is it selling for $300, $400, or is it still less than
I think it's still been that 180 in that sort of 210 range.
Okay.
So I said 210. So Donovan Mitchell is currently trading at 220.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, I feel like that's spot on.
You think that's success? If Toronto was the team that was succeeding, not Cleveland, that'd be a $200 sale. So
I think comping Donovan Mitchell to Scotty Barnes is pretty reasonable at this point.
Okay.
I think Donovan Mitchell has got a lot more high end game time, game finishing talent than Scotty Barnes does.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that his overall popularity, when I say he, I'm saying Donovan Mitchell, he's just not that popular.
Yeah.
I think it's as simple as that. It's one of those things you just have to accept it. So
I do think that below sub 100 for Barnes is a really, really solid buy.
yeah, I love that so much.
And not to sound pessimistic, but I think we are coming to, there's going to be a changing of the guard coming with LeBron retiring. Steph's not far off. Like, there are some of these players are starting to age out, and there needs to be the next generation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd be trying to find those diamonds in the rough, and you don't have to stay in Toronto your whole career. So he may change and end up in the spotlight and be a superstar. So,
yeah,
interesting one.
We're going to just touch on this very briefly. I don't think we don't have that much time left in the show, but I did want to do 20 or 30 minutes on this. This is PSA updating their turnaround times for submissions. So they've just lengthening out the submission time. So value is now 65 business days. Value bulk is 65. TCG bulk is 65. Value plus bulk dual service is now 75. So when they say dual, they're talking about card and also autograph grading. And they've also increased the price of the TCG bulk price to $18.99. Now, in addition to that, Australians are affected by PSA in a different way. Well, actually, they're affected by Donald Trump because with his tariff, there just has to be a way. So PSA is currently not accepting international submissions at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's just because they don't know how to manage the tariff situation. Now, BGS, on the other hand, have just put that price back onto the consumer.
Yeah.
So BGS have already worked it out. So maybe what we're going to see from PSA very shortly
is a bit of an announcement. Yeah.
You know, the really interesting thing though is like, if a card is printed in America, will it be exempt from the tariffs? And how do you demonstrate each card where it was printed from? You know, without an agent looking at every single card, there's going to be an element of trust or, you know, something that goes into this process. So how they're going to work it out, not too sure. I suspect there's going to be more information coming onto this, you know, really quickly. I do wonder if it's one of those things where either Trump goes away, the tariff goes away, or they work it out on charge it, or we see submissions going to Japan sooner than what PSA was maybe expecting
planning to. Yeah.
Because we talked about that on a show a few weeks ago.
Yeah, about the opening a great,
which is very timely for this type of, you know, situation playing out here.
For sure.
What would you like to talk about for our last topic of today?
We alluded to it, so let's talk about Shaq quickly, shall we? The golden.
Yeah. Let's talk about Shaq. That's a really fun one to end on. We've given this one the title of Pump and Dump.
Yes.
This is from our friends at Golden Co.
Our friends
fingers crossed
that are coming to the
which fingers
to the
crossed
hangout.
They will be in Australia, and we've reached out to them to come onto the podcast. So it'll be great to have someone on from Golden.
Yeah.
Come talk some cards with us.
It would be great, yeah.
Do you collect Shaq? Let us know below. We're not going to do that. We're just going to talk about it on the show. All these amazing Shaq cards are available now in our weekly auctions. Is Shaq undervalued in the hobby? Adam, what do you think about that?
I think he is a little bit. Maybe he's appropriately valued. I don't know. There's a lot of cards. That's the thing. And this is where probably Shaq's where my pop count argument begins. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of Jordans out there, but there's a lot of Jordan fans. And there's a lot of Shaq fans, but there's a lot more Shaq cards. So
proportionately.
I think the supply and demand is maybe out of whack. But maybe you focus it in. Like, I really like Shaq, and I like picking up Shaqs where I can.
Yeah.
Like I like Jordan, I like Pippen, I like Shaq. I don't think he's overvalued, and I think he's maybe a little bit undervalued.
Yeah. So just to take your point, then you named two people immediately before you mentioned Shaq, and I think that's where he sort of fits into the hobby landscape. There's always going to be one or two or three people ahead of him.
Pippen's my PC, but Shaq's the second player I would say from that era that I identify. So,
but again, that it still just reinforces what I'm saying, though. I don't think he's ever going to be like a true top tier number one in the hobby. You know, he's a second place. He's a very good second place,
just like LeBron is in the Curry era. Sorry.
Well done. I think Kawhi Leonard would quite like that one too. Yeah, so I think that my feeling about Shaq is that he's signed a lot. I put him into the Magic Johnson conversation on this.
True.
It's not difficult to get your hands onto a Shaq or a Magic autograph. And so I really look at this from sort of two perspectives, in that he's done a lot of good for the hobby because he's signed so much, and it makes it affordable for people to get their hands onto stuff. So I think that's really good. I think the other thing too about this guy is he also fits my other rule of his prices of his cards is cheaper than what the total amount of talent that he has is. And so you can look at that in two ways. You can say, look, he's probably a little bit undervalued, but this is where I'm going to twist this one around a little bit, maybe be a bit manipulative of my own rule. I feel like he had so much talent that he didn't execute on. And he's also like very publicly spoken about this. And so I actually wonder if, like, sort of subconsciously, does that sort of get into people's head? Like, you find him a little bit hard to like because he sort of admitted to being lazy and he just wanted to go out there and have a good time. It's like,
true.
I don't know. Look, I don't own, I would say almost, I might have a couple of Shaq cards in there inadvertently, but I definitely don't have an autograph or anything like that. Like, I just personally, I just don't find him that collectible. That's just sort of my own personal preference. But, you know, I think there's a lot out there, you know, to look at. Look, I think if you're really going to, you know, buy something, you might get like a jambalaya, but go and get a not badly graded, a lower graded card. So you might get like a 5 or a 6.
Yeah.
And we heard that on today for the eBay stats, where you've got those big, you know, jumps on those lower end cards because, you know, they're very difficult to get those cards. And then you can get them at that cheaper price point, and you sort of get that higher, you know, return on investment for your, you know, your percentage there. I wonder if that's actually the play for someone like Shaq. I think there's so many autographs out there.
Agreed.
Like, how collectible, you know, are his autographs now? Final thoughts, Adam. Let's go.
Final thoughts. I'm going to go and start identifying collectors. 1 in 3 adults is a collector.
You're going to be like the Terminator walking down the street, just like scanning.
No, it's more like I'll be asking the Panini question, more like, what do you collect? Because people will be able to relate. It's just it might be different. I collect basketball.
You've got a
cards.
1 in 3 chance.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just like opening packs of cards. Pack odds are back.
Yeah. 1 in 3 chance that you better talk to someone in the lunchroom about collecting. Yeah, actually, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you get caught up talking to people. You're like, oh God, what am I going to talk about? Yeah, you're right. I like those odds.
Yeah. But thanks for a good show.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, everybody on the YouTube. Thanks, everybody at Central Coast Radio.
Yeah.
It's been a great show. Looking forward to the next one. And